Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring the 6 recollections.
6 recollections.
And those are a set of Buddhist practices for cultivating mental clarity and well-being.
Yeah.
We are using a combination of teachings and stories from Buddhist texts as our source material.
Okay.
And we're really going to try to figure out how these ancient practices can be helpful in your daily life today.
Yeah, I think that's what's so fascinating about these recollections is, it's one thing to sort of have a concept, a philosophical concept or an idea, but how can we actually apply that to our experience, to our daily lives? And these recollections offer, I think, a really fascinating path to doing that.
Yeah.
Really looking at shifting our attention away from unhelpful states of mind,
right,
and moving it towards more beneficial ones.
Yeah.
And in a way, you can see them as kind of mental training wheels to help us develop greater awareness and control over our thoughts and emotions.
Yeah. And I think especially today, that's so helpful, right?
Absolutely.
We're so busy,
yeah,
and everything's moving so fast, and there's so many negative things that we're exposed to, and we're just bombarded with all this stuff, and we're trying to filter it all, and our brains just aren't meant to handle it, right?
Yeah.
So having these practices to be able to, kind of reset, and kind of get back to a more
skillful way of being.
Yeah, skillful way of being. Yeah, exactly, is really appealing.
Yeah.
But before we even get into the specifics of what they are, I'd like to learn a little bit more about just like the background. Like how did this come about?
Yeah.
What's the history here?
Well, the 6 recollections were actually taught by the Buddha himself in response to a question from one of his followers named Mahanama. Mahanama was seeking guidance on how to best direct his mind, how to use his mind skillfully.
Oh, okay.
And so the Buddha, in response to that question,
shared these 6 specific practices.
So these are really techniques that are meant to help us refine our mental state.
Exactly, yeah. You can think about it this way. Imagine your mind like a garden.
Okay.
And if you're not tending to that garden, if you just kind of leave it to do its own thing, it's going to get overgrown with weeds.
Sure.
With negative thoughts, anxieties, and unhelpful patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And these recollections are like tools for tending that garden.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
To help you clear away the weeds and cultivate a more peaceful and flourishing inner landscape.
I love that. So we're trying to weed our mental garden and make it flourish into something beautiful. Okay. I'm with you. So let's get into the first one. What is it?
Okay, so the first recollection is the recollection of the Buddha.
Okay.
And right away I want to clarify something.
Yeah.
This isn't about worshiping a deity.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's not about that. It's about reflecting on the qualities that the Buddha embodies.
Okay.
So qualities like his wisdom, his compassion, and his perfect enlightenment.
So we're trying to kind of embody those qualities within ourselves.
Precisely, yeah. By focusing our attention on these positive attributes, we're essentially setting a positive tone for our own minds.
Okay.
And the text actually compares it to cleansing the head with cosmetics.
Okay.
So you're removing dirt to reveal the radiance underneath.
So we're washing away the grime, so to speak, and revealing our inner Buddha.
You could say that. But I think the real power of this recollection goes beyond simply just feeling good.
Okay.
It's about shifting our perspective.
Okay.
So instead of getting caught up in our own shortcomings, we can choose to focus on an embodiment of ideal qualities.
Okay.
And this mental shift has a ripple effect, bringing us closer to those very qualities we're contemplating. Oh, wow. That's cool. Okay. So it's kind of like, setting our internal compass toward those qualities.
Yeah.
And it's helping us to navigate our thoughts and actions in a more positive direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I like that. So what about number 2?
Okay. So the second recollection is the recollection of the Dhamma. Okay. Now, Dhamma, that's a word I hear a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not always sure I really understand it.
Yeah. Well, Dhamma can be understood in a few different ways.
Okay.
Sometimes it can refer to the teachings of the Buddha.
Okay.
Or more broadly, it can refer to truth or the way things are.
So it's kind of like contemplating truth and how truth can guide us.
Yeah, exactly. And connecting to principles and values that bring clarity and purpose to our lives.
Yeah.
It's like having a moral compass to navigate the complexities of life. Yeah. And so this recollection, the recollection of the Dhamma, can really help us in our daily lives because Imagine you're feeling lost, you're feeling uncertain about a decision.
Sure.
And so by reflecting on the Dhamma,
Yeah.
you're essentially tapping into a source of wisdom and guidance.
Right.
You're asking yourself, what is the most skillful way to act in this situation?
Got it.
Or what principles can guide me towards a positive outcome?
Okay.
And even in the text uses the analogy of cleansing the body.
Okay.
So washing away impurities and revealing a state of purity.
So it's kind of like we're aligning ourselves
Yeah.
with a deeper truth,
Exactly.
both internally and with how we interact with the world around us.
Yeah, it's about bringing our actions into harmony
Yeah.
with our understanding of the Dhamma.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. What about number 3?
So the third recollection is the recollection of the Sangha.
Oh, okay. Now, Sangha, that's the monastic community, right?
Yes, traditionally it refers to the monks and nuns, but I think it's important as we're exploring these recollections to think about them in a way that's relevant to our modern lives.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So while it does refer to monks and nuns, I think we can think about Sangha more broadly as any community of support on our path.
So it could be our friends, our family, teachers, mentors, even just a group of like-minded individuals who are kind of inspiring us to grow and learn.
Absolutely, yeah. It's about recognizing the inspiring nature of seeing others dedicated to growth and goodness.
Yeah.
Even if they're not Buddhist monks or nuns.
So it's like we're not alone on this path.
Yes.
We can draw strength and inspiration from others who are also striving for positive change.
Yeah. The text compares it to cleaning clothes.
Okay.
So through the support and inspiration of others, we can remove impurities and stains from the mind.
Oh, I love that. So we're all kind of help each other shine a little brighter.
Exactly, yeah.
I love that. Okay, what's number 4?
Number 4 is the recollection of virtue.
Oh, I like this one already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important for us to acknowledge our positive qualities,
Yes.
especially in a world that often, focuses on our flaws.
Right.
We're so quick to criticize ourselves and be down on ourselves.
Yeah.
So this is a good one.
Yeah, this recollection encourages us to contemplate our own virtuous actions,
Right.
acts of kindness, generosity, or ethical conduct.
So it's about really just recognizing the good that's within us.
Yes, and seeing those actions as evidence of our inherent potential for goodness.
Oh, okay.
And the text uses a very powerful analogy here, compares it to polishing a mirror.
Okay.
So removing the tarnish to reveal our true shining self.
Oh, I love that. So we're not, our mistakes don't define us. It's really that, our kindness, our compassion, and our capacity for ethical living is really who we are.
Exactly. And the more we reflect on our virtuous actions, the more we strengthen our commitment to living in alignment with those values.
Okay. Okay. I like that. 4 down, 2 to go. What's number 5?
So the 5th recollection is the recollection of generosity.
Generosity. Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Especially in our, kind of consumerist culture.
Yeah.
Where we're constantly being told to buy more, have more, be more.
Yeah.
It's hard to be generous.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It can be a real challenge to embrace generosity in a culture that often equates happiness with material possessions.
Yeah.
But this recollection isn't just about material giving.
Okay.
It's about cultivating an attitude of open-handedness.
Oh.
So it's a willingness to share not just our material resources, but also our time, our energy, our kindness.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that true abundance comes not from what we accumulate, but from what we give.
And how does that actually look in our daily lives? I mean, I get donating to charity, I get volunteering our time, but what are some more subtle ways that we can kind of practice this?
Yeah, it could be as simple as offering a listening ear to a friend who's going through a tough time,
Okay.
giving someone a genuine compliment,
Yeah.
or even just letting go of the need to be right in an argument.
Right.
It's about shifting our focus
Yeah.
from what we lack to what we can offer to others.
Yeah. So recognizing the abundance that we already have and letting that flow outward.
Exactly. And the text emphasizes that by letting go of our attachment to things,
Okay.
we actually experience a sense of lightness and joy.
It's like we're decluttering our mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a great way to put it.
Okay. I like that. All right, so we've made it to the sixth and final recollection.
Yes. This one is the recollection of the devas.
Devas. Now, I'm not familiar with that part.
Okay, yeah. So devas are often translated as deities or celestial beings.
Okay.
But in this context, it's more helpful to think of them as representing higher states of being.
Okay.
So again, we're not talking about worshiping deities, but rather drawing inspiration from these elevated states of consciousness.
Okay, so we're recognizing that we have that potential within us
Yeah.
to embody those qualities,
Yes.
like wisdom, compassion, joy.
Yeah, all of those.
Okay, I like that. So we're setting a high bar for our own growth, basically.
Yes, using the devas as a model for the kind of qualities we aspire to develop.
All right, so I'm starting to see how these 6 recollections all kind of fit together.
Yeah.
We're moving from, contemplating external sources of inspiration, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha,
Yeah.
to really exploring our own inner potential for goodness
Yeah.
through reflecting on our virtues, our generosity, and the qualities of, these higher beings, the devas.
It's a great summary, yeah. And what I think is so fascinating is how they work together to create a kind of upward spiral.
Okay.
So by focusing on these wholesome objects, we're gradually shifting our perspective,
Yeah.
cultivating positive qualities, and moving closer to a state of greater peace and well-being.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, how do these actually play out in our daily lives?
Yeah.
It sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But how can we actually apply these
Yeah.
to the challenges and the stresses
Yeah.
that we're faced with every day?
That is where the real magic happens, because these recollections aren't just abstract concepts.
Okay.
They're tools that we can use to navigate real-life situations.
Okay.
And the texts actually offer some really insightful examples
Okay. Yeah, great.
of how to do just that.
I'd love to hear one. Can you share an example?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a story about a monk who was tormented by negative thoughts.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
We all have those moments, right, where our mind just gets stuck in a loop of negativity.
Yeah.
And so this monk was experiencing a great deal of mental suffering
Okay.
because of these thoughts. And something really interesting happened.
Okay.
A devata saw his suffering and decided to intervene. Yeah, a devata is kind of like a benevolent spirit.
Oh.
And so this devata saw the monk suffering and wanted to offer some guidance.
Oh, wow. Like a divine intervention.
You could say that, yeah. It's a fascinating detail in the story.
Yeah.
And so this devata gives the monk some really practical advice.
Yeah.
And the advice is, from inappropriate attention, you're being chewed by your thoughts.
Okay.
Relinquishing what's inappropriate, contemplate appropriately.
So basically, hey, you're focusing on the wrong things. Think about something else.
Yeah, exactly. Choose to focus on something more beneficial.
Okay.
And specifically, the devata recommended that the monk practice the 6 recollections.
Okay.
So shifting his attention to these wholesome objects.
Okay.
The Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, his own virtues, his generosity, and the qualities of the devas.
Okay. And did it work?
The story tells us that it did.
Okay.
The monk, by practicing the recollections, was able to transform his mental state. He experienced a sense of joy, rapture, and peace that replaced his previous suffering.
Wow. Okay, so they really can act as an antidote
Yeah,
to those negative thoughts and feelings.
precisely. It highlights how, we have the power to choose where we direct our attention.
Yeah.
We can get caught up in negativity, or we can consciously choose to focus on something more uplifting and beneficial.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing how these can be really helpful.
Okay.
But how often should we be doing these?
Yeah.
Like, is this something that we need to do all day long?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the answer is it depends.
Okay.
There's no hard and fast rule here.
Right.
I think that the key is to find what works best for you.
Okay.
And to make it a regular part of your routine.
So finding those little moments throughout the day
Yeah.
where we can pause and reconnect with these wholesome objects.
Yes, exactly, yeah. It could be during your morning meditation.
Okay.
It could be during your commute. It could be while you're taking a walk in nature.
So like a mental reset button
Yeah.
when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Precisely. And the more we practice, the easier it becomes to shift our attention away from negativity and towards these more wholesome objects. Like
Building a mental muscle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's training our minds
Yeah.
to be more resilient, to respond to challenges with greater peace and clarity.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm getting it.
Yeah.
I'm still I'm still a little intimidated by all this. Like meditating on these concepts still feels very abstract and kind of out of reach for someone like me.
Yeah.
Who's not, a Buddhist monk living in a cave somewhere.
I understand that hesitation.
Yeah.
It's natural to feel that way when you're first approaching these practices.
Well,
but I want to assure you that it's much simpler than it might seem.
Okay, good.
Could we maybe walk through one?
Yeah.
Just kind of see what it actually looks like to practice.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with the first one.
Okay, yeah, let's start with the recollection of the Buddha.
Okay.
So this practice involves bringing to mind the qualities of the Buddha.
Okay.
His wisdom, his compassion, his loving kindness, and his perfect enlightenment.
So we're trying to envision those qualities and connect with them on a personal level.
Yeah, exactly. You could reflect on stories of the Buddha's life.
Okay.
You could visualize his image, or you could simply repeat phrases that evoke his qualities.
Okay. Do you have any examples of phrases we could use?
Yeah, you could repeat phrases like, may I be filled with wisdom like the Buddha?
Okay.
Or may I cultivate compassion like the Buddha?
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like setting an intention to align ourselves with those positive qualities.
Yeah, and then as we're contemplating them, we should be noticing how it makes us feel.
Yes, exactly. Notice how it affects your mind and body.
Yeah.
Do you feel a sense of peace, joy, inspiration?
Yeah, okay, so that would kind of naturally shift our mental state in a more positive direction.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more readily those qualities will arise within you.
Okay, so it's a gradual process.
Yeah.
Of cultivating these qualities within ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the recollection of the Dhamma?
Yeah, so the recollection of the Dhamma is all about contemplating the teachings of the Buddha, the truth that he revealed about the nature of reality.
So we're connecting with that wisdom and thinking about how it applies to our lives.
Yes, exactly. So, for example, you could contemplate the Four Noble Truths, which outline the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation.
Okay.
Or you could reflect on the Eightfold Path, which offers a framework for ethical living and mental cultivation.
So we're using the teachings as a guide for understanding our own experiences and navigating the challenges of life.
Exactly. And as you contemplate the Dhamma, notice how it affects your thoughts and actions. Do you feel a sense of clarity, purpose, motivation to live in alignment with the teachings?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. It sounds like we're becoming more mindful and intentional about how we live.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the recollection of the Sangha?
Yeah.
I'm especially interested in that one because, like we talked about,
Yeah.
most of us aren't living in a monastic community.
Right.
So how do we practice that?
Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, the Sangha can be understood in a broader sense to include anyone who is dedicated to the path of awakening.
Okay.
So it could be our spiritual teachers, it could be fellow practitioners, it could even be friends and family members who inspire us to grow.
Okay, so it's about recognizing that that importance of community, surrounding ourselves with good influences.
Precisely, yeah. And we can practice this recollection by reflecting on the qualities of those who inspire us.
Okay.
Their kindness, their generosity, their wisdom, their dedication to the path.
It's like we're creating a Sangha.
Yeah.
Even if we don't have a physical community.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And we can also practice this recollection by actively seeking out connections with like-minded individuals.
Okay.
So attending meditation groups, retreats, workshops can be incredibly beneficial.
So building that support.
Yeah.
Both online and offline.
Exactly. And as you contemplate the Sangha, notice how it affects your sense of belonging and connection.
Okay.
Do you feel supported, inspired, encouraged to continue on your path?
Yeah, I can see how that would be really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, what about number 4, the recollection of virtue?
Yeah, so the recollection of virtue encourages us to acknowledge and appreciate our own positive qualities.
I really like this one.
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to, get caught up in self-criticism.
Yeah.
And forget about all the good that we do.
You're right. It's so important to give ourselves credit for our acts of kindness, for our generosity, for our ethical conduct, and any other qualities that we admire in ourselves.
So we're like making a highlight reel of all the good things we've done.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
But it's not just about feeling good about ourselves. It's also about recognizing that we have the capacity for goodness.
Okay.
Even when we make mistakes.
So it's a form of self-compassion.
Yes.
And recognizing our own inherent worthiness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as you contemplate your virtues, notice how it affects your self-perception.
Okay.
Do you feel a sense of pride, self-respect, motivation to continue living in alignment with your values?
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would foster a sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
And encourage us to live more authentically.
Absolutely.
Okay. Number 5, the recollection of generosity.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about how we can practice this,
Yeah.
in a way that goes beyond just, writing a check to a charity.
Yeah, absolutely. So the recollection of generosity is all about cultivating that attitude of open-handedness.
Right.
A willingness to share our time, energy, resources, and kindness with others.
So shifting our focus from what we lack to what we can give.
Precisely.
Okay.
And it could be as simple as offering a listening ear to a friend,
Okay.
giving someone a genuine compliment, or even just, letting go of the need to be right in an argument.
Right.
It's about looking for opportunities to give freely without expecting anything in return.
Okay. And how does that benefit us?
Yeah.
Like, what do we get out of it?
The texts emphasize that generosity leads to a sense of joy and fulfillment
Okay.
and interconnectedness.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that our happiness is intertwined with the happiness of others.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah.
It seems like generosity is really an antidote to that isolation
Yeah.
that a lot of people feel these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also helps us to shift from a scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when we focus on what we lack, it's easy to feel, insecure and afraid.
Yeah.
But when we focus on what we can give, then we tap into that abundance and possibility.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay. And finally, number 6, the recollection of the divas.
Yeah.
This one seems a little more mystical than the others.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about it.
Yeah, so the recollection of the devas is all about recognizing our own potential for goodness and aligning ourselves with higher states of being.
Okay, so we're recognizing that we have the capacity for these things.
Yeah.
Just like the divas do.
Exactly. It's about setting a high bar for our own personal growth and using the divas as inspiration for the kind of qualities we aspire to cultivate.
Okay.
And we can practice this recollection by reflecting on the stories and myths associated with these beings, seeing them as metaphors for the journey of spiritual awakening.
So even though they might not be literal beings, we can still draw inspiration from their qualities.
Yes, exactly.
And use that to help guide us.
Yes.
Okay.
And as you contemplate the divas, notice how it affects your perspective on life.
Okay.
Do you feel a sense of awe, wonder, a deeper connection to something greater than yourself?
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. I can see how that could be a really expansive practice
Yeah.
and help us to get out of our own little heads,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was all 6.
Yes.
I guess the big question is, how do we make this a regular practice?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize that there's no right or wrong way to practice these recollections.
Okay.
The most important thing is to find what resonates with you
Right.
and to make it a regular part of your daily life.
So it's like we've been given this toolkit,
Yeah,
and now it's up to us to figure out which tools work best for us.
exactly. And just like any skill, the more we practice, the more proficient we become.
Okay, so it's an ongoing process
Yeah.
of learning and experimenting. Finding what works for us
Yeah,
and adapting our practice as we go.
absolutely.
Wow. This has been such a fascinating deep dive into these 6 recollections.
Yeah.
It really feels like these practices offer a really practical path
Yeah.
for navigating life and just dealing with all the challenges that we face in the modern world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they provide a really useful framework for shifting our perspective, training our minds,
Right.
and cultivating those qualities that lead to greater happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about how they can be helpful, but do you have any tips or suggestions
Yeah.
for how to actually make this a part of our lives?
Yeah, I think one approach is to choose one recollection that particularly resonates with you.
Okay.
And maybe make that a focus for a few minutes each day. So
Okay.
it could be during your morning meditation, on your commute, or even during a walk in nature.
So just finding those little pockets of time.
Yeah, exactly. Even just a few minutes
Yeah.
of focused contemplation can have a significant impact.
Okay.
You can also try integrating the recollections into your daily activities. So, for example, you could bring to mind the recollection of generosity while you're doing volunteer work,
Right.
or the recollection of virtue while engaging in acts of kindness.
So we're kind of infusing our actions with the spirit of these recollections.
Precisely, yeah. It's about bringing mindfulness and intention to everything we do.
Okay, like that.
Another helpful tip is to use reminders throughout the day.
Okay.
So you could set an alarm on your phone, post sticky notes in your workspace,
Right.
or use mala beads to count your repetitions.
So we're creating an environment that supports our practice.
Exactly, yeah. And
Right.
I think, we've talked about a lot of different ways to incorporate these practices, whether it's through formal meditation, informal reflection, or just bringing a greater awareness to our daily activities.
Right.
The key is to experiment and find what works best for you.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I think it would be helpful to just do a quick recap of each one.
Yeah, great idea.
Just so we can really, solidify everything and give our listeners something to take away with them.
Absolutely. Let's revisit each one and distill its essence.
Perfect. So starting with the recollection of the Buddha.
Yeah, so the recollection of the Buddha is all about connecting with the qualities of the Buddha, his wisdom, compassion, loving kindness, and perfect enlightenment. And by reflecting on these qualities, we inspire and uplift ourselves, cultivating a more positive and peaceful state of mind.
Wonderful. Okay. And the recollection of the Dhamma.
Yeah, so the recollection of the Dhamma is about contemplating the teachings of the Buddha,
Okay.
the truths that he revealed about the nature of reality and the path to liberation.
Right.
And by reflecting on these teachings, we can gain clarity and understanding and find guidance and inspiration for our lives.
Okay. Now the recollection of the Sangha.
The recollection of the Sangha is about recognizing the importance of surrounding ourselves with positive influences, people who uplift us and support us on our journey.
Right.
And by connecting with like-minded individuals, we cultivate a sense of belonging, purpose, and shared aspiration.
Okay. And the recollection of virtue.
So the recollection of virtue is all about acknowledging our own positive qualities, our acts of kindness, generosity, ethical conduct,
Right.
and any other attributes that we admire in ourselves.
Okay.
And by reflecting on these virtues, we cultivate self-esteem, self-compassion, and a sense of authenticity.
Okay. And the recollection of generosity.
The recollection of generosity is all about cultivating that attitude of open-handedness,
Right.
a willingness to share our time, energy, resources, and kindness with others.
Yeah.
And by practicing generosity, we can experience joy, fulfillment, and a sense of interconnectedness.
Wonderful. And finally, the recollection of the Devas.
Yeah, so the recollection of the Devas is about recognizing our own potential for goodness and aligning ourselves with higher states of being.
Okay.
And by reflecting on the qualities that the Devas represent, we expand our perspective on life and tap into a sense of awe and wonder.
Wow. That was a great recap.
Yeah,
I think our listeners are well equipped now
I hope so.
to start exploring these practices.
Yeah, I agree. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Right.
The most important thing is to approach these practices with an open mind
Right.
and a willingness to experiment.
Great. Well, to our listeners, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Which recollection resonates most with you?
Yeah.
How do you plan to incorporate these practices into your daily life?
Yeah. Share your thoughts and experiences with us.
We're excited to continue this exploration with you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the 6 recollections.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, happy recollecting.